Get out of my gym. The voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Rachel Morgan looked up to see Tyler Brooks blocking her path. 220 pounds of sculpted arrogance towered over her, arms folded, jaw tight, his bulky frame planted between her and the training mat at the Denver Combat Center. "Women like you belong in a yoga studio," he sneered, loud enough for the nearby group of trainees to hear. "Not in a place for real fighters." Laughter erupted. Phones appeared, some already recording. Rachel stood still, her arms relaxed at her sides. She didn't flinch. The long sleeve of her hoodie shifted slightly as she adjusted her stance, revealing the faded edge of an old tattoo. A military insignia. Half seen. Half forgotten. Tyler didn't notice. He flexed his chest mockingly and turned to his entourage. "She probably thinks cardio kickboxing makes her a fighter," he chuckled, tossing a sideways glance at the woman who refused to react. Rachel said nothing. Not yet. She turned and calmly walked to the edge of the mat, gathered her gear, and left without a word. But inside, something long buried had stirred. That night, in the quiet of her modest one-bedroom apartment east of downtown, she sat on the floor with her back against the couch. Her gym bag was still zipped, but her father's old dog tag sat in her hand. The metal was cool. Familiar. A lifeline. She closed her eyes. 8 years since she left the service. 8 years since she buried the last of her team. The nightmares came less now, but when they did, they left her shaken and drenched in sweat. She wasn't here to prove anything. She just wanted to move. To breathe. To feel her body regain the rhythm of life she had once mastered. But the gym had other plans. Rachel had chosen the Denver Combat Center for its anonymity. A place with a solid reputation. Classes for all levels. She never planned to stand out. And for the first 2 visits, she didn't. Then Tyler saw her. And everything changed. Tyler Brooks was a star in this space. Undefeated in the region for 3 years, nephew to the gym's owner, and followed online by thousands who mistook bravado for strength. He liked being the center of the room. Rachel's quiet presence, her calm intensity, didn't fit into his world. And Tyler didn't tolerate what he couldn't control. It started small. He bumped her punching bag mid-combo, smirked, and made jokes. She moved aside. Then he took her water bottle and tossed it under a weight bench. She retrieved it without a word. When she entered the locker room, the laughter sometimes followed her in, echoing off the tile. "Who brings a librarian to a fight club?" someone said once. She didn't know who. It didn't matter. Still, Rachel returned. Not out of pride, but out of something deeper. Something old and worn and unshakable. She trained alone when she could. Practiced forms in her apartment. Studied movement. Honed focus. Her colleagues at the physical therapy clinic didn't know. They saw the gentle, focused woman with perfect posture and a quiet tone who helped patients walk again. They didn't see the scars beneath the sleeves. She had no need to be known. She just needed to remember who she was. But Tyler had made her remember for a different reason. She didn't want to fight him. She didn't want to fight anyone. But the truth was, that gym, his gym, had become something else. Not a place to grow. A place to be tested. Pushed. Cornered. And something about that reminded her of another place. Another time. Back when the stakes were higher. Back when hesitation could kill. She had left that world. Or tried to. But some battles don't end when you leave the battlefield. Some follow you home. Rachel looked at the dog tags. Closed her hand around them. Then she stood, unzipped her gym bag, and pulled out her wraps. It was time to remember. Not for Tyler. For herself. The gym had a rhythm. A pulse. From the moment Rachel walked through its glass doors each morning, she could feel it. The thud of gloves on leather. The squeak of sneakers on matte flooring. the clipped shouts of instructors correcting form. It should have been invigorating. Instead, it pressed against her like a slow, rising tide. Tyler Brooks' presence infected the air. He didn't have to say anything. His followers did the work for him. She could feel it during warm-ups. A delayed high five. A sideways glance. A partner who went too easy on her like she was glass, or too hard like they wanted to see her break. Nobody said her name, but they had one for her now. Grandma. She had heard it whispered the first time as she was wrapping her hands. One of the newer kickboxers had said it with a laugh, then quickly looked away. It stuck. Not because of age, Rachel was only 38, but because it painted her as out of place, fragile, irrelevant. In the locker room, she sometimes found her bench occupied by half-empty gym bags arranged like a silent message, "Go somewhere else." Some days, her reserved class slots would mysteriously vanish from the schedule. The front desk claimed computer errors. Always with a shrug. Always with a smile too tight to be real. She could have walked away. She had nothing to prove. But Tyler made it clear, he wanted her gone. And something about that stirred an old instinct. Not anger. Not pride. Discipline. Focus. The kind forged not from ego, but from fire. Rachel kept training. She adjusted her schedule. Came early. Stayed late. When the gym got too crowded, she returned to her roots. There was a converted barn outside Aurora, a 20-minute drive east, owned by a retired Special Forces buddy named Michael Reese. It wasn't fancy. No ring, no fans, no playlist pounding overhead. Just bags, pads, and silence. She started going twice a week after hours. Michael said little. He didn't need to. He knew the look in her eyes. He had worn it himself once. They worked in silence. Rachel drilling takedown defenses. Close-quarter strikes. Redirection techniques. Everything that Tyler's size would try to dominate with, she trained to dismantle. Not to hurt him. Just to show that she could not be moved. Back at Denver Combat Center, the pressure only escalated. When she dared to sign up for one of the more advanced grappling technique classes, quietly, on the board with her initials, Tyler saw it the next morning and turned it into a spectacle. "Look who thinks she's a cage fighter now," he announced loudly, pointing to the sign-up sheet. "Better call an ambulance just in case." Laughter followed. His entourage, always circling like vultures, fed off the ridicule. The instructor said nothing. Rachel stayed on the list. That day, Tyler used her as a demonstration dummy. What should have been basic holds turned into full-force locks, torque applied until bruises blossomed along her biceps and shoulder. When she tapped, he released late. Always with a smile. "Careful," he warned, loud enough for the whole class. Delicate bones at that age. After class, Rachel sat alone by the lockers, ice pressed to her upper arm. Her breath calm. Her mind sharper than it had been in years. Back at home, she watched recordings of previous challenge events hosted by the gym. The so-called Members Gauntlet. Open to all skill levels, but clearly designed to showcase the best talent. She saw Tyler winning most of them. Loud. Aggressive. Fast. But careless in his footwork. Sloppy with his guard when confident. She took notes. The following week, without her knowledge, her name appeared on the gym's main lobby whiteboard under the list of participants for the upcoming gauntlet. Rachel Morgan, confirmed. She hadn't signed up. Tyler leaned against the wall nearby when she saw it. Grinning. Waiting. "Looks like you're in," he said with that familiar, toxic charm. "Ballsy move, Grandma. Let's hope your hip holds up." People watched, smirking behind protein shakes and taped knuckles. Rachel stared at the board. Then at Tyler. Her eyes didn't flinch. "I'll be there," she said quietly. And just like that, a line was drawn. The gym began to buzz. Rumors flew. Bets whispered. His friends doubled down on their torment. Someone removed the batteries from her timer mid-circuit. Another switched the settings on her treadmill. A few even tampered with her gloves, loosening the straps to mess with her grip. Still, she trained. In the early morning, before the sun hit the rooftops, she ran stairs in the city park. At dusk, she practiced rolls and pivots in the barn while Michael held the pads in steady silence. She was bruised, sore, exhausted, but not broken. One night, as she left the gym late, she saw a teenager watching through the glass. A girl, maybe 15, in a school uniform with a backpack slung over one shoulder. She flinched when Rachel noticed her, then turned to go. Rachel stepped outside. "You come by a lot," she said gently. The girl paused, unsure. "You ever train?" Rachel asked. "Not really," the girl mumbled. "Just watching, I guess." Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out an extra pair of gloves. "You want to hit pads sometime?" The girl looked at them like they were made of gold. Then she nodded. "Name's Lily," she whispered. Rachel smiled. "Rachel." The two shook hands under the amber streetlight. For the first time in weeks, Rachel felt something settle in her chest. It wasn't about Tyler. It wasn't about the gym. It was about holding space for people who had none. The week before the gauntlet felt like moving through a minefield. Everywhere Rachel turned, eyes followed her. Not with admiration or curiosity, but anticipation. Like they were waiting for her to crack. The gym had stopped being neutral ground. It was a battlefield. One without bullets or explosions, but the rules were the same. Power, intimidation, control. And Tyler Brooks had the high ground. Each morning, Rachel arrived before sunrise. Not because she was afraid. But because that was what she knew: prepare before the others show up. Control what you can before someone else takes it from you. In the mirrorless side room where old pads and broken kettlebells were stored, she practiced silently. Repetition. Timing. Balance. Hours of muscle memory layered over years of military conditioning resurfaced with every movement. She rarely saw Lily during the rush hours, but some evenings the girl showed up again, always with that curious, hungry look. Rachel had started teaching her basic form. Not to become a fighter, but to become centered. Strong. Capable. "She reminds me of someone," Michael had said one night at the barn. Rachel didn't respond. She didn't need to. He was right. The day of the gauntlet drew closer. And the pressure intensified. Tyler's crew ramped up their game. Someone poured water into her gloves. Her wraps went missing, twice. One of the trainers assigned her a drill partner who threw actual punches during a light contact sparring round. Rachel took the hits. Absorbed them. Adjusted. But the moment that solidified it came on a Wednesday evening. She was on the treadmill, halfway through a run, when Tyler walked by and slammed the emergency stop button with his palm. The belt screeched to a halt. Rachel stumbled forward, catching herself on the rails. Tyler leaned in close. "Little heads up," he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. "There's no shame in pulling out early. You've made your point. You showed up. Congrats." She stared straight ahead, not acknowledging him. He smiled. "You come to that event and you're mine. I won't hold back. And nobody's gonna save you." Then he walked away. Rachel stepped off the treadmill, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. She didn't look shaken. But something inside her shifted. That night, after locking up the barn, she sat in the front seat of her car staring at the dashboard. Rain tapped lightly on the windshield. Her fingers reached into her jacket pocket and closed around the dog tags. She remembered the jungle. The silence after the explosion. The metallic taste of adrenaline. The way her sergeant's voice had echoed in her ear: "Let them underestimate you. That's where your power lives." Tyler didn't scare her. But what he represented did. He was a reminder of everything she thought she'd left behind. The constant need to prove yourself in spaces not meant for you. The rules stacked against you from the beginning. The arrogance. The abuse of authority masked as charisma. It wasn't just about her anymore. She arrived at the gym the next day and found the final gauntlet roster had been posted in full view of the lobby. 12 names. Her name dead center. Rachel Morgan. Next to it, written in red marker, someone had scrawled, "Hope the medic's on standby." No one stood near the board, but she could feel the stares from the weight room windows. She didn't erase it. Instead, she walked to the front desk. "I need a change of locker," she said. The receptionist blinked, confused. "Sorry, we don't." Rachel didn't wait. She opened her phone and pulled up photos. One of them was her left forearm, bruised. Another was a gym bag soaking wet on the locker floor. Another showed a pair of damaged gloves. "I'm documenting everything now," she said calmly. The receptionist swallowed. "I'll see what we can do." Rachel nodded once, turned, and walked away. She spent the rest of the afternoon at the barn. Michael was waiting. "I want to run the whole sequence," she said. "The gauntlet?" She nodded. "Everything. From start to finish. Deadlifts. Grappling drills. Obstacle transitions. I want it all." He raised a brow. "Even the simulated combat?" "Yes," she said. "Especially that." They worked past sundown. Her hands ached. Her shoulders screamed. But her mind was still. Each time she slipped. Each time she stumbled. She reset. Began again. It wasn't about perfection. It was about ownership. About walking into that gym and knowing that nothing they threw at her could surprise her. By the time she collapsed into the barn's corner bench, sweat-drenched and trembling, Michael handed her a towel and said quietly, "You're ready." Rachel didn't answer. She just nodded. On the way back to her car, she passed the reflection of her own body in the barn window. For the first time in years, she didn't see a veteran trying to forget. Or a therapist trying to blend in. She saw a weapon honed in silence. A force sharpened not by anger, but by clarity. Let Tyler laugh. Let them all underestimate her. She wasn't walking into the gauntlet for revenge. She was walking in because no one, not Tyler, not his uncle, not anyone, got to decide who belonged. The morning of the gauntlet broke cold and bright. Autumn light cut across the city skyline, bouncing off windows and drawing long shadows across the pavement. Inside the Denver Combat Center, the energy was electric. The kind that settled low in the stomach, part excitement, part dread. Rachel arrived early, as always. She wore the same black athletic gear she always trained in, no logos, no sponsors, nothing flashy. Her long sleeves were rolled just once, and her brown hair was pulled back into a tight, no-nonsense braid. The parking lot was already half full. People milled about inside with thermoses and cameras. Local fighters, friends of participants, amateur MMA fans looking for the next viral moment. The gym had posted a teaser the night before, featuring the lineup and some carefully edited clips of Tyler from previous years. No mention of Rachel. But her name was there. Front and center. She moved to a quiet corner, placed her bag down, and began her warm-up. Her movements were precise, almost meditative, wrist circles, shoulder rolls, controlled squats, deliberate breathing. She didn't need hype music. She didn't need an audience. Tyler arrived 40 minutes later, fashionably late and loud. He wore a red compression shirt printed with his own initials and a large logo across the chest. His entrance was flanked by two of his closest friends, both dressed to match. The crowd parted for them like a school of fish around a shark. He didn't look at Rachel right away. But he knew exactly where she was. As the event organizer, Frank Brooks, the gym's owner and Tyler's uncle, took the mic and welcomed everyone, Rachel felt the familiar sensation she used to get before deployment. Not fear. Not adrenaline. Something deeper. A focused readiness. An inner stillness that no outside noise could penetrate. The first phase of the gauntlet was raw strength, deadlifts, push sleds, and pull-up endurance. Rachel didn't lead the board, but she didn't falter either. Her scores were solid. Unexpectedly so. Judges raised their eyebrows. Spectators took a second look. Her movements were clean. Efficient. Understated. Tyler, of course, dominated the early rounds. His lifts were powerful, showy. He added an extra rep just to flex and wink at the crowd. Every shout from his fans made Rachel seem smaller by comparison. That was the plan. During water breaks, she noticed her name being murmured more often. Some called her the Dark Horse. Others still used the nickname, Grandma. But something in the tone had shifted. She wasn't being ignored anymore. The second segment was technical, grappling reversals, submission escapes, striking drills. This was where Rachel's foundation began to show. The timing. The angle. The control. Where others relied on force, she relied on leverage. She understood hips, joints, pressure points, not just as a fighter, but as someone who had built bodies back from injury. One judge, a former Marine, paused while watching her execute a transition from mount to side control. "Where'd she learn that?" he muttered. A younger trainer beside him shrugged. "No idea. But she didn't learn it here." By midday, the scores tightened. Tyler was still ahead, but not by much. That wasn't part of his plan. He watched her now. Not as an object of ridicule, but as a potential threat. The third segment was the obstacle course: tires, rope climbs, wall vaults, balance beams. Tyler flew through the first half. He roared across the gym, slapping the final checkpoint with both hands. He turned to the spectators with a victory growl. Rachel was quiet. She kept her pace steady, not fast, but consistent. On the balance beam, narrow and slick with sweat, she moved like a dancer. Focused. Controlled. That's when it happened. A shoulder. A shove. Barely noticeable. One of Tyler's friends, acting as the next spotter in line, had passed just close enough to nudge her off-center. Not enough to push her outright. Just enough to destabilize her. Her right foot slipped slightly, and she wavered. A collective gasp swept the gym. She didn't fall. Her arms extended, her core engaged, and she caught herself with a deep inhale. Her ankle throbbed from the correction, but her focus held. She finished the course 20 seconds behind Tyler. But not broken. The judge at the end narrowed his eyes at the spotter. He didn't say anything. But he made a note on the clipboard. Rachel walked off without a word. No protest. No call-out. She had learned long ago, the best retaliation was excellence. Tyler noticed. His smirk was tighter now. Less amusement. More calculation. Frank took the mic again. "For the final phase," he said, "we're doing something a little different this year. A controlled combat simulation." A murmur spread through the room. This was new. "Each participant will demonstrate self-defense techniques under pressure," Frank continued. "Against a trained aggressor. Judged on effectiveness, control, and composure." Some participants shifted uncomfortably. Tyler turned to his crew. "This is where it gets fun." He made a show of cracking his knuckles. When Rachel's name was called for her round, she stepped forward without hesitation. She removed her windbreaker. Underneath, she wore a faded, dark green shirt with a familiar but worn symbol on the chest. The insignia was unmistakable to those who knew. Army Special Forces. The room stilled. The judge with the military haircut stood straighter. Another participant whispered, "No way." Tyler's eyes narrowed. He hadn't seen that shirt before. Rachel stepped onto the mat. "I'll take her," Tyler said loudly, grinning. People laughed. The judge looked to Rachel. She gave a nod. No fear. No fanfare. Just readiness. The instructor explained the setup. Controlled movement. Frontal attack scenario. No excessive contact. You both know the drill. Tyler nodded. Barely listening. He bounced on his feet, shoulders loose, showboating. The crowd began circling in. Phones rose again. This was what they came for. Rachel took her stance. Relaxed. Open. But any operator would see the truth. Her weight was evenly distributed. Her breathing was even. Her hands low, but poised. Centered. Lethal. The instructor raised his hand. Then dropped it. Tyler charged. The moment Tyler's foot left the mat, Rachel's senses narrowed. Noise receded. The laughter, the shouting, the rustling of the crowd, it all dulled into a low hum. Her eyes locked onto his shoulders. The way he led with the right. The small hitch in his stride from an old ankle injury. The arrogance in his posture. Overconfident. Open. He reached for her collarbone, aiming for a takedown with flair. Something flashy. Something loud. But Rachel wasn't there. She shifted her weight just enough to the side, a half-inch adjustment, and Tyler's hand grazed empty air. Her left palm snapped up, not hard, not fast, just precise, striking the junction between his neck and shoulder, a pressure point known only to those trained to find it. At the same time, her right leg slid behind his, and she used his own momentum to guide him forward. Tyler's massive frame, all 220 pounds of it, left the ground. There was no scream. No cry of surprise. Just the sound of his body hitting the mat with a deep, echoing thud. Silence. It didn't last long. Gasps rippled through the gym. Someone dropped a phone. Even Frank, who stood near the edge of the mat with his clipboard, took an unconscious step back. Rachel stood over Tyler, her stance relaxed, hands at her sides. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak. For a few seconds, Tyler didn't move. Then he groaned, rolling onto his side, eyes blinking in disbelief as he tried to sit up. His body had shut down momentarily from the nerve strike. A textbook technique. Instant incapacitation. No permanent damage, but deeply humbling. The judge with the military cut was the first to break the silence. He started clapping. Slow. Steady. Sharp. Others followed. First a few, then many. The sound built until it filled the space. Tyler sat up, red-faced, stunned. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. His entourage had shrunk into the corners, quiet and pale. Rachel extended a hand to help him up. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he took it. She pulled him to his feet with a single, controlled movement. He wobbled, regained his balance, and stepped back. Still, she said nothing. She didn't need to. The instructor cleared his throat. That, he said, pointing at the center of the mat, was a demonstration of control, technique, and tactical efficiency. He didn't need to say more. The crowd had already seen what mattered. Rachel stepped away, returning to her bag. She sat quietly, toweling sweat from the back of her neck. A few participants approached, one by one, offering nods or words of respect. One young woman with braided hair whispered, "I've never seen anyone fight like that." Rachel simply smiled. Across the gym, Tyler stood alone. Still surrounded by people, but somehow isolated. He didn't speak to his crew. He didn't wave to fans. The same confidence that had always carried him, loud and brash, had cracked. Frank approached the center of the mat with his showman's voice back in full swing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with practiced charm, "we've witnessed something special today. Not just strength, but mastery." He gestured toward Rachel. "Rachel Morgan," he continued, "has reminded us that the fight game isn't always about the biggest hit, it's about timing, discipline, and control. A fresh round of applause rose. Phones were lifted. Pictures were taken. Rachel remained at the edge, not stepping forward, not seeking the spotlight. She had done what she came to do. The final results were posted an hour later. Tyler placed second overall. Rachel placed first. It wasn't even close. In the locker room, she packed in silence. Her muscles ached, but her mind was still calm. Focused. The kind of calm she used to feel in the barracks after a successful mission. Not celebration. Just stillness. Completion. As she zipped her bag, she heard the door open. Tyler stood just inside the threshold, his posture smaller, shoulders rounded slightly. "Got a minute?" he asked. Rachel said nothing, but didn't stop him as he stepped closer. "I've been thinking," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "About everything. About what I did. What I said." She waited. "I was wrong," he continued. "You didn't owe anyone anything. You showed up. You trained harder than any of us. And I tried to tear you down for it." He paused, struggling with the weight of what came next. "I saw that shirt," he said. "Special Forces. Delta, right?" Rachel's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't need to talk about it," he added quickly. I wanted to say thank you. For not embarrassing me worse. For showing restraint. And I'm sorry." There was no performance in his voice this time. No smirk. Just discomfort. Honesty. A man grappling with the pieces of himself. Rachel nodded slowly. "You still have flaws in your guard," she said. Tyler blinked. Rachel stood, picked up her bag, and slung it over her shoulder. "If you're open to it," she added, "I could help you fix them." Tyler's mouth opened slightly, unsure how to respond. But he nodded. A moment passed between them. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. But something more useful. Mutual understanding. Rachel stepped past him and pushed the door open, her figure disappearing into the hallway's light. Behind her, Tyler remained frozen in place. The war was over. But the rebuilding had just begun. The Denver Combat Center changed. Not in one day, and not because of a single takedown. But the current shifted. And people noticed. A week after the gauntlet, Rachel arrived early again, same hoodie, same quiet steps, but something was different. The eyes that followed her now held something unfamiliar. Respect. Trainees paused mid-rap to give her space. A few nodded. Some smiled nervously. None mocked. No one blocked her path. Tyler wasn't at the center of the room anymore. He trained on the far side, solo, headphones in, his movements sharp but more grounded. The swagger was gone. In its place, a focused silence. Rachel taught her first self-defense class 2 weeks later. At first, she wasn't sure anyone would come. But when she walked into the side studio, a dozen women were already lined up. Some looked nervous. Others looked angry. One woman, older, with streaks of gray in her hair, said softly, "I never thought I'd walk into a gym again." Rachel nodded once. Then she started the warm-up. They moved through basic stance, footwork, distance awareness. Nothing fancy. Rachel's voice was steady. Her cues were precise. By the end of the class, they were sweating and standing taller. One by one, they left with eyes a little sharper. Shoulders set just a bit straighter. Lily stayed behind. She wore an oversized hoodie and leggings with one knee torn. She had barely spoken the entire hour. But she had moved well. Rachel had been watching her footwork. "You feel okay?" Rachel asked, handing her a towel. The girl nodded. "I want to keep coming." "You can." Lily hesitated. "Even if I can't pay?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She picked up her phone and opened the gym's internal system. She typed quickly, scrolled through membership plans, then looked up. "You're on my guest list now," she said. Lily's lips parted. Her eyes shone with something unspoken. Gratitude. Hope. Maybe even belief. She looked down at her hands. "They always said I was too weak." Rachel knelt to her level. They were wrong. That night, after her second class, Rachel stood in the hallway just outside the training floor, sipping water. Frank approached, clipboard tucked under one arm. "We've had 3 other gyms reach out," he said. "Wanting to know about the program you're running." Rachel said nothing. "I know I didn't handle things right before," he added. "Family complicates things. I let it get in the way." He paused, uncertain. "You've built something here. I'd like to help it grow." Rachel studied his face. There was no rehearsed pitch this time. No deflection. Just a man trying to correct the direction of a ship he once let drift too far. "I'm not looking to build an empire," she said. Frank chuckled awkwardly. "Well, the world might have other plans." She shrugged. "Let it." He turned to go, then paused. "Tyler's been different," he said. "Since that day. Less noise. More work. Whatever you did, it stuck." Rachel didn't respond. She didn't need to. Weeks passed. Rachel continued teaching. The classes grew. Not just women. Veterans. Older men returning after injury. A single dad learning how to defend himself for his daughter's sake. The gym, once dominated by posturing and intimidation, now held space for growth. Tyler approached her one evening as she was packing up. "You free tomorrow?" he asked. "For what?" "I want to run some drills. Been working on that thing you mentioned, my guard." Rachel looked at him. He stood without bravado. No cameras. No entourage. Just a fighter, ready to learn. 6 a.m., she said. His eyes widened slightly. She raised a brow. "Too early." He smirked. "I'll be here." And he was. That morning, they moved across the mat in silence. Trading shifts, checking stances, refining strikes. He didn't talk much. But he listened. He learned. And slowly, trust filled the silence. Not just between them, but in the gym itself. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, the Combat Center hosted a small exhibition featuring Rachel's self-defense students. Lily was there. So was the gray-haired woman. So was Tyler, assisting with pad work. There were no medals. No trophies. Just technique. Growth. Precision. When Rachel stepped forward to speak, her voice was steady. "We're not here to fight battles," she said. "We're here to end them." The crowd applauded softly. Later that night, Rachel stayed behind. Alone. She moved through old drills in the empty studio. Her breath was slow. Controlled. Her movements clean. She no longer moved like someone trying to prove anything. She didn't carry her past like a burden anymore. It moved with her, fluid and unhidden, woven into every shift of her weight and every breath between transitions. Her father's dog tags glinted softly around her neck, no longer tucked away. Outside, the city lights blinked under the night rain. Inside, Rachel stood in stillness. A new rhythm filled the room. Not the rhythm of pain. But of purpose. Of ground reclaimed. Of strength that never needed to shout.